Good evening. Welcome to the February Committee of the Whole meeting. The Board of Trustees of Cypress-Fairbanks Independent School District is now convened in the Committee of the Whole meeting on Thursday, February 9, 2017 in the boardroom of the Cypress-Fairbanks Independent School District Instructional Support Center, 10300 Jones Road, Houston, Texas at 6 p.m. For the purpose of reviewing that portion of the Monday, February 13th, 2017 school board agenda designated as action items and to hear designated reports and recognitions posted in the meeting notice as is required by Texas law. No action will be taken at this meeting. I want to welcome the members of our audience and our television viewers to this meeting of the Board of Trustees. As the Cypress-Fairbanks Board of Trustees, we're here to set goals, listen to reports, approve budgets, contracts, personnel appointments, and make policy for the district. It is not the role of the board to make day-to-day operational decisions. The management and day-to-day operations of the district are the responsibility of the superintendent. We have policies and procedures in place to resolve concerns and issues. This is a public meeting of the Board of Trustees, not a meeting of the public. Prior to this meeting, board members received information related to items on tonight's agenda. Agenda items will not necessarily be handled in the order listed on the notice. The meeting is open to all who wish to attend and hear the matters discussed. During the course of this meeting, the board may determine that a closed session is necessary. In that event, the board will meet in closed session to consider matters duly posted for this meeting as permitted by sections 551.071 to 551.084 inclusive of the Texas Government Code. These proceedings are airing live on CFTV Channel 16 and CFTV Online on the district website. They will also be rebroadcast throughout the month on Channel 16 and available as video on demand on the website. For the tape to adequately reflect the proceedings, I respectfully ask that you please refrain from talking while others are speaking and that your cell phones are turned off or in a silent mode. Thank you for taking the time to join us this evening and for your interest in Cypress-Fairbanks Independent School District. I don't believe we have anybody here from the CLC and no Boy Scouts. That's kind of unusual. So we'll move right along on the agenda. We have two reports that will be heard on Monday, one will be heard, and one is a written report. And everyone has received a copy of that. So we're going to wait till Monday for information on those reports. So let's move to the action items. 5A, the board will consider approving the tax refunds of 500 or greater for, these are action items consensus, The board will consider approving the tax refunds of 500 or greater for Cypress-Fairbanks Independent School District. The board will consider approving the minutes of the January 23rd, 2017 regular meeting. And those are our only two consensus. Does anyone want to move those off consensus? Seeing none, those will stay. Let's talk about our non-consensus items and see if we want to move some of those to consensus. The board will consider awarding bids and contracts and/or authorizing purchase orders as recommended in the posted agenda item. 1, 2016 district-wide emergency call station. 2, athletic and physical education equipment and supplies. 3, classroom materials and supplies. 4, musical instruments, furnishings, and electronics equipment. 5, processed produce. 6, science equipment and supplies. 7, special education equipment and supplies. Any questions? Anyone?
Just one.
Mr. Covey?
It's for Matt. Matt, could you kind of give us more of a description of these emergency call stations that we're going to be using, putting in place? He's going to do it? Okay. You had on the nice suit. Good. Thank you.
So as part of the 2014 bond allocation, it included 60 call stations that you typically would see. You would recognize them at college campuses. They're the blue stands with a low blue light on top that allow for, in case of emergency with some of the larger sites and at the ag centers, for a student or staff member, in case of emergency, to push that. It will call dispatch, the police dispatch, to able to communicate directly with that person in need. And so we're putting those at all the high school campuses and athletic facilities, as well as the ag barns.
And just out of curiosity, what's there to keep people from pulling pranks?
Honesty.
Honesty.
Yep.
Okay.
It'll go to the same venue of the lockdown buttons that are part of the bond programs at the high schools, is just people knowing what they are and having the maturity to watch that. Now they have cameras on them, so in case of constant prank, you can see who's pushing the button.
Good.
So-
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
Appreciate it.
Any other questions on 5A? Does everyone feel comfortable moving that to consensus? All right, we'll move that to consensus. 5B, the board will consider approving the external auditors, Weaver and Tidwell LLC, to perform the annual audit of the district's financial statements for the fiscal year ending June 30th, 2017. Any questions on this item? Mr. Jackson?
And Stuart's not here this evening. He left because he was ill. So Karen, this is for you. The board book explains the answer to my question, but I wanted to ask it in a public venue. So we have a change in the name of the auditors. If you would talk a little bit about that, and then also indicate, will we have the same partners on the account, or are we going to have all brand-new partners on the account?
Okay, yes. Weaver, Hereford Lynch Sellers and Kirkham merged with Weaver Tidwell last year. And just so you know, for the sake of this last year's audit, the audit program was totally different than the audit program that we were audited under previously. So that's almost like changing auditors because it's a different process. We will probably have the same partner next year, but they actually put several partners on the job. They have one that's here during the process, but then they have other partners that review the audit report as well as the audit papers before they're allowed to release the report.
And when was the last time we sent out an RFP?
2013. This will be our 5th year with this audit firm.
Very good, thank you.
Any other questions? Does everyone feel comfortable with that being on the consensus? All right, we'll move that to consensus. 5C, the board will consider approving the budget amendments for the period of October 1st, 2016 through December 31st, 2016. Any questions? Any questions? Does everyone feel comfortable moving that to the consent agenda? All right, we'll move that as well. 5D, the board will consider approving on first reading additions, revisions, or deletions to district policies. 1, DBA local, employment requirements and restrictions, credentials and records, that's a revision. 2, DFBB local, term contracts, non-renewal, that's also a revision. 3, DFFA local, reduction in force, financial exigency, that is a revision. 4, DFFB local, reduction in force, program change, a revision. 5, DFFC local, reduction in force, continuing contracts, revision. EIA local, academic achievement, grading progress reports to parents, a revision. And that completes those items. Any questions on any of those 6 items? Seeing none, how about moving that also to consensus? Good with everybody? Great. 6, E, the board will consider approving on second reading additions, revisions, or deletions to district policies. 1, CPC local, office management, records management, a revision. Any questions on that item? Seeing none, can we move that to consensus? Great. F, the board will consider a second letter of non-objection to Harris County Commissioners Court regarding the construction of a grocery store near Woodard Elementary. Do we want to have a closed session on that particular item?
I do need to give you some legal advice on the reason for even having to make that request, and
Great. So we'll do that at the end of the meeting, and we won't be making a decision on that as I talked about in the very beginning of the meeting. The decision will be made on Monday. G, the board will consider approving a resolution to join and participate in the National Cooperative Purchasing Alliance and authorize the superintendent or designee to execute all necessary documents related to the National Cooperative Purchasing Alliance. Any questions on G? Seeing none, can that be moved to consensus? H, the board will consider approving a resolution to join and participate in the U.S. Communities Government Purchasing Alliance and authorize the superintendent or designee to execute all necessary documents related to the U.S. Communities Government Purchasing Alliance. Any questions on that? Seeing no questions, can that be moved to consensus? I, the board will consider the approval of a lease agreement regarding the installation, operation, and maintenance of weather research instrumentation between Understory, Inc. and Cypress-Fairbanks ISD at designated campuses, and authorize the superintendent or designee to negotiate and execute the final terms and conditions and execute all documents. Any questions on that item? Yes, Ms. Hartley?
I was just curious, I looked at their website and everything, and I noticed they do have a program or curriculum. Will we be using any of that, or is it primarily just the weather stations on our schools?
We won't be using their curriculum per se, but we'll look at what they have and embed into what we already have, such as our weather units.
Okay, I think it's really interesting and neat, and glad we're joining in, but I just was curious as to what we were gonna use. Thank you.
Mr. Jackson?
Linda, if you would, and once again, the board book answers the question, but I'd like it to be on, for our viewers to see. Explain a little bit more how this will benefit our students and how the teachers can access the information if they can access it.
Well, it will give them real-time information, real-time measurement regarding the temperature, the wind, hail, barometric pressure, humidity, and other types of weather-related issues that'll be right there at their fingertips, and they can actually access it every day. And then we'll be using that information and embed it into our curriculum units that we have for weather. But this is actually something they can utilize every day.
Any other questions? Any other questions? Does everyone feel comfortable moving that to consensus? All right, that'll be consensus. I, the board will consider the approval of a lease agreement regarding the, I'm sorry, I'm reading the wrong one. I apologize. All right, I'm going to read K first and then J on the next two items. We're going to consider those in a different order. K, the board will consider approving construction proposals and contracts paid from the bond funds to the recommended contractors and authorize the superintendent or designee to execute all necessary documents related to such contracts as follows. 1, track and field improvements to Cy Fair, Cy Ridge, Cy Creek, and Langham Creek High Schools. And 2, 2016 Cypress Springs High School renovation. Any questions on those items? Mr. Jackson?
So I don't know if this is for you, Roy, or for Dylan, but briefly explain the need for the improvements for the track and football field. I'm not doing it so much tongue-in-cheek. My daughter ran on that back in '03, and we needed the work done then. So I can just imagine what it looks like now, but because of the size of the contract, please explain for the public what we're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. We're going in at the campuses, and I believe it's 2 campuses. We'll be doing the replacement of the running track, so we'll be resurfacing it, going down to the base, performing any base repair that may be required, and then resurfacing it, as well as all the field events at the campuses there. This contract also includes field improvements to our competition fields. If you recall, back in May of last year, we presented to the board the administration recommendation to go ahead and convert to an artificial turf competition field system. This is our second phase. We did 4 of those fields last year. We're doing 4 this year for this summer.
And I have one follow-up question. You and I visited about this topic at some detail a number of years ago as part of the bond proposal. And so I guess maybe this goes to you, Mark. The thinking was, as we upgrade our high school facilities, is the plan still that we want to keep those for the athletes and then perhaps open up the junior high facilities once they're installed for the benefit of the public?
Yes and no. The yes part is, we do want to keep our high school facilities open for school activities, especially with the new artificial surface, and then also we want to protect the tracks because the tracks are very expensive. But not just for athletes. We want to make sure our drill teams and our bands and PE classes and everyone have access to a safe, dry field as much as possible. But yes, we are in the process, and I know Roy can tell us exactly when we're going to be redoing, or not just redoing, but adding surface tracks to our middle schools. And we will open those up as more neighborhood community places for people to come walk and run and use. And then that way we can tighten up the high school use, again, because of the use of those high school fields, but also just because of how expensive the turf is and then the track surfaces. So did that answer your question?
That does answer the question. I'm sure all of those who run on the high school track will miss the divots that are in that running track, but I imagine they'll figure out how to get around it. Thank you, sir.
Any other questions on that item? How does everyone feel about moving that to consensus? Is that all right? You want to keep it separate? Okay.
Just because of the dollar value of the award, I'd like to leave it separate.
That's perfect. We'll leave that on consensus. And then we're going to talk the J. And I do believe we have a brief presentation on this item. J1, or excuse me, J, the board will consider approving and authorizing the superintendent or designee to enter into the miscellaneous professional service contracts related to the following projects. 1, track and field, football field improvements at Cy Fair, Cy Ridge, Cy Creek, and Langham Creek High Schools. And 2, 2016 Cypress Springs High School renovations. And I believe Mr. Brady is going to briefly.
Actually, it's just questions only on that. That's
I apologize. I have the wrong information on my agenda. How about questions on that one? Anybody? Either side? Let's leave that also on non-consensus since it relates to the other one. All right.
I'll say,
Oh, sure.
maybe on Monday night, it might be helpful to explain why there is the big item on J for Cy Springs, and then that says renovations, and then also on item in, you have K and also the one previous to it. 2 different Cy Springs renovations on J and K.
Item J is related to the miscellaneous service contracts that we typically enter into. For Cy Springs, we'll be modifying and upgrading the HVAC system over there, and it requires us to come in and do additional testing and balancing of the system, and those services are fairly expensive, and that's why you see that on the agenda based on the dollar value.
I'm just saying,
Yeah, because
anyone
it's
else
the
look at that?
That is a big dollar amount.
Yeah. All right, so we'll consider that on Monday. We do have a Boy Scout in the audience, and I wanted to make sure I recognized him before we move any further. Caleb Hawkins is with Troop 939 at Spillane Middle School, and he's working on his communication badge. Can you stand up so we can recognize you, Caleb? Thank you for coming tonight. You picked a really great meeting to be at, because it's brief. Or at least it's shaping up to be brief. We do have item number 7, board discussion. A, the board will discuss the superintendent's evaluation for the 2015-16 school year, and we are going to discuss that in closed session. So we'll pick up our other item in closed session. Our superintendent's briefing will be on Monday, and I would suggest that we go into a closed session. Can I have a motion?
So move.
Thank you, Mr. Covey. Thank you for seconding Dr. Ogletree. The board will now adjourn to a closed session under the Texas Government Code Open Meetings Act for the purposes stated in the posting of this meeting. If the board determines that any final action, final vote, or decision on any matter considered in the closed session is required, such final vote, action, or decision shall be taken upon the reconvening of the meeting in open session or at a subsequent board meeting in open session after the proper notice has been posted. I assure you we're not going to make any decisions tonight, so if you come on Monday, that's when we'll make those decisions on those items. Yeah, and like I said, Mr. Hawkins, you chose a great meeting. Because we're going to adjourn to closed session, and we'll see everyone on Monday night, and we look forward to that. Thank you very much for being here and watching us on TV.